There are places that do not exist on any map. Places the wind refuses to mention. Places where even time walks softly, afraid to be seen. And then there is Obodo Anyi, a village hidden beneath a valley of endless mist, where every Friday night at the stroke of midnight, the entire village disappears. Not evacuates, not hides, disappears. Homes, trees, goats, fire pits, people, everything. For centuries, no one knew why, until a stranger came asking questions the village could not afford to answer. Long before the world became loud with engines and glowing screens, elders would gather children around crackling fires and warn them of valleys where the wind between worlds was thin. They would say, "Do not go where the mist refuses to lift." But curiosity is a drum that never stops beating, and it was curiosity that brought Adama Okeke to Obodoani. Adama was not like the storytellers of old. She did not believe in wandering spirits or ancient deities that demanded yam sacrifices under moonlight. She believed in facts, in cameras, in evidence. A journalist from the restless city of Enugu, Adama had built her name tearing down myths people were too afraid to question. So, when rumors reached her that somewhere beyond the River Njaba lay a village that vanished every Friday night, she did what skeptics do best. She laughed until she saw the satellite images. Every week, the same thing. A cluster of huts present on Thursday, gone on Saturday, then back again on Sunday. Government dismissed it as a glitch. Academics ignored it. But Adama smelled a story, and stories were rent that journalists paid to survive. She arrived in Obodoani on a Thursday evening. The valley was wrapped in mist so thick it moved like breath on a mirror. The only bridge leading into the village creaked beneath her feet like an old man whispering warnings. Below, the river did not flow, it circled, like something searching for a way out. The village itself was peaceful. Children chased goats across red earth pathways, women stirred bubbling pots beside clay huts, and palm wine laughter floated through the humid air. It was the kind of city folk dreamed about when their generators failed at night. But something was wrong. Everyone watched the sun like it owed them money. Every elder wore 2 watches. Farmers carried sundials carved from bone. Even children paused mid-game to glance nervously at shadows on the ground. Time was not passing here, it was being counted. The oldest man in the village introduced himself as Pa Nwoye. His back bent like a question mark, and his eyes held centuries inside them. "You should not be here on a Thursday evening," he told her quietly. Adama smiled and replied, "I'm here to write about your disappearing village." Something flickered in his expression, not anger, but fear. "Stories are safer when they are not true," he replied. Friday arrived like a thief, not loudly or suddenly, but with a silence too heavy for birds to carry. At dawn, the village changed. Children were not playing anymore. Goats were tethered indoors. Even the wind moved differently, as though it didn't want to linger. Adama walked through the village with her camera, capturing every anxious glance, until she noticed the women moving with silent urgency from hut to hut. One by one, they dipped their fingers into small wooden bowls filled with silvering ash and painted strange symbols above their doors. Circles within triangles, lines that bent like broken bones, marks that seemed to move if stared at too long. "What is that?" asked Adama a girl nearby. The girl's voice trembled as she replied, "It keeps the counting honest." By sunset, birds have vanished, not flown away, simply vanished. Their songs cut short mid-air. The river stopped circling. The mist grew thicker, and Pa Nwoye found her again. The spirit of the void is hungry, and the rent is due at midnight. Before Adama could reply, a thunderous crack echoed through the valley. They both turned toward the bridge, or what it was left of it. It had collapsed into the circling river below. Panic clawed into her throat as she demanded, "You people planned this?" But Pa Nwoye's eyes only glistened. "We would never bring a stranger here on a Friday. That would be cruel." At 11:50 p.m., the moon turned violet like a bruise upon the sky. The temperature dropped, not with cold, but with absence. Sound folded in on itself. Crickets went silent mid-chirp. Even Adama's breath made no noise. At 11:59 p.m., a stillness fell that did not belong to the living world. Adama raised her hand and screamed as her fingers began dissolving, skin turning to glass and bones becoming outlines of fading light. Across the village, huts trembled, trees blurred, and people whispered prayers that ended in forgotten languages. Then midnight came. The earth sighed, the sky cracked like old pottery, and Obodwani ceased to exist. Homes unraveled into threads of shadow, goats collapsed into dust made of starlight, trees liquefied into swirling blackness. People became silhouettes, silhouettes became outlines, outlines became nothing. Adama stood alone, not in the village, but in something that remembered where the village had been. A barren field beneath a sky with no stars. The mist was gone, replaced by breathing shadows that watched her from every direction. "You are awake sooner than the others," a voice said from everywhere and nowhere. Something emerged from the darkness, not walking, but unfolding, a figure made of void and moonlight, with eyes like collapsing galaxies. Images flooded her mind. Centuries ago, Obodwani had been proud, too proud, when the deity known as Ekwensu Ugba, keeper of things that should not be named, demanded tribute for the land that protected their harvest. The villagers refused. They mocked and betrayed the deity. Instead of striking them down, it did something worse. It made them necessary. "Every Friday they come here," the voice whispered. "This court must sit. They serve eternity as witnesses and attendants until the debt is repaid." Adama's voice trembled. "So why am I here?" The shadows leaned closer. "Because for them to return to the world of breath, one must stay behind." Saturday morning approached, and light bled into the shadow realm like wounds reopening. Around her, the village began to reassemble itself, huts knitting from memory, trees growing from yesterday, people stepping back into flesh. Hope ignited inside her until she tried to move. Her feet were part of the ground, and her shadow was gone. A warm hand touched her shoulder. It was Pa Nwuyi, solid again, alive again. "Thank you," he whispered, "for your sacrifice." Tears streamed down her face as she said, "You knew." He nodded slowly. "We all did. And now we can go on for another week." As the sun rose, the mist returned, and the birds began singing. Where Adama had stood, nothing remained. Sometimes, travelers say there is a valley where the bridge falls apart every Friday night, a place that never appears on maps, a village that welcomes strangers with quiet relief and watches the sun as though it knows time is not a gift, but a debt. And when the mist is thick enough, you might hear a journalist's voice carried in the wind, still asking questions in the court of shadows.